It takes a village. Well, in this case, it might take more than one village. And in fact, your people might help my people. Today, I'm going to take a look at a game that is a set collection, card drafting, action selection game that is all about the Inuit people and their culture. Today, I'm taking a look at Inuit, the Snowfolk.
It's time for another Dice Tower review with Robert Geistlinger.
So here we're taking a look at Inuit. This is a drafting and set collection game where players are going to be running a Inuit village and going to be getting villagers and also taking additional cards for things such as game. Now the easiest way to explain this game is really simply to just take you through what these actions do over the course of a game. So on a player's turn, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to reveal a card from the white out here into this great white area. Now these are the cards that are available for drafting, and they're going to draft using one of their abilities on here. Now they can also reveal additional cards using scouts, but we'll explain that when I get to the end. So we could choose this elder. Now the elder allows us to take villagers and assign them to jobs. Currently we could only take one because we don't have anybody assigned as an elder, so let's say we decide to take this one and we decide to make that person a whaler. We'll go ahead and reveal another card. Now obviously other players at the table will be taking turns, but for the purposes of this video we'll just reveal a card and continue on. Next up we have the shaman, which allows us to take rites and spirits. We currently again have no elder, so we can take one card, and we'll show how multiple cards work when we get here a little further. But let's say we decide to take this Rite of Clear Sight. Now this says each player who has more spirits and rites in their village than are in yours discards a spirit. Well, currently that's nobody, but it is going to be worth points. But if someone else did, they would have to discard. We'll go ahead and reveal another card so we can keep moving along here. Also, we could have taken a spirit here, and I want to explain the spirit when we get to the end, because those are going to be worth additional points. So next we have the warrior with the weapons. This allows us to basically get rid of Inuit that maybe would be beneficial to our opponent, and we display their weapons. So maybe we decide to take this one and we put it here, converting it into a weapon. We'll go ahead and put another card out here. Now we come to the whaler. Now this is interesting because we have a villager here, so now we could take up to 2 cards. Now there are currently no orcas out, but I went ahead and set aside some cards just so I could show how this would work. So let's say that we had these 3 orca currently out in the Great White. We could take up to 2 because we have 1 by default and we have 1 villager there. So we could take these 2 orca and place them here in our game. If we'd had an additional villager, we could have taken them all. Had we not had this villager, we'd only been allowed to take 1. Next up is the bear hunter, which also allows us to take polar bears, so we could take this one. And then we have the seal trapper, which allows us to take seals. Then finally, we have the scout. And the scout, if there is anyone assigned to it, and I'll go ahead and assign this one here, means that when we are doing the Great White, so we'd flip over 1 card by default, and I'm going to organize these just a little bit to make this easier to see. Because we have the 1 by default and another, we would be allowed to, if we wish, reveal 2 additional cards. Now this can be rather risky because, yes, it might reveal something that's good for us, but it also might reveal something good for our opponent that we can't currently take. Now I said earlier I would discuss this particular spirit, and that's because I wanted to show this first. So if we chose this shaman action, we took this spirit, this one says we get 2 victory points for every scout, which would be at the end of the game. Currently we have the 2, so we would get 2 victory points for each of them. Now play is going to go back and forth like this until all players at the table have taken all their turns, and we eventually get to the end of this deck. Now, somewhere buried in the last 11 cards is going to be this polar nightfall. Now, that symbolizes that we are in the last round of the game, so we'll complete that round and then proceed to final scoring. So let me go ahead and reset a few things here just to make this a little more easier to show you how the scoring works. I'll just assign a couple villagers here and there. Maybe put this person as an elder. And there we go. Okay, so now we're going to do a final scoring. Let me clear these out as well. And that's going to be done using this pad here. Now we're just going to score these in order. Now there's a few things on here that I'll cover in a second because they're part of some built-in expansions, but for now we'll just go through the spirits. Inuit through spirits. So for Inuit, this is where it's interesting in that you're going to score for every one of your color that is out on the table, whether it's in your village or not. So in this case, I would get points for this one. I'd also get points for this one here and this one. So I'd get 2 points, 2 points, and 1 point for the child, so I would get 5 points. So now what we're going to do is we're going to lose points for anything not of our colors, those who are not loyal to us. So I'm going to lose points for this one here of 1 point because neither of my colors on here. I'm going to lose 1 for this, which will be 2 points, and I would not because I do have this. So that's going to lose me 3 victory points here. Next, we're going to count up our game. So I have 2 points for the seal, 4 points for the seal, so that's 6, polar bear rather. So that's 6, and I have 3 for the orca, so that's going to be 12 points in game. Then for weapons, I'm going to get 1 point for every card I converted into weapons, so that's going to be a point. For any rights that I have, I'm going to get their victory points, so I'd get a point for this one. And then as we said, this fox here is giving me 2 points for every scout, so I'm going to get that in spirits. We're going to total up everyone's victory points, and whoever has the most points is the winner. Now, before I get over to my thoughts, I do want to point out a couple other things real quick. Is one, if you're worried about any sort of colorblind thing, these look like these colors should be okay, but I'm not colorblind. These do have different symbols that match up to each of the villages, so you can use that. Additionally, I mentioned these over here. These are 2 expansions built in the game that probably after a while you're just going to play with. We've got the conflict deck here, which adds in some great seals, great bears, some additional items for warriors, some conflicts, which the conflicts are interesting because you can choose to conflict with somebody or you can choose to go at peace, gaining you both victory points. And then you've also got these polar cards here that can be another expansion. So you do have some replayability built right in. But that's going to be how this game works. Let me go ahead and give you my final thoughts. So let's look at Inuit the Snowfolk. Now, this was a game that I got to play at GAMA this year because my flight got delayed, and I was sitting there with the guys from Boards and Dice, and they brought this game out and we played it, and I immediately fell in love with this one. So I guess that spoils the review right there, as I really like this game a lot. Now, I was a little concerned with the game when I first saw the box of it, wondering how much it would be okay in terms of just sensitivity to the Inuit people. They're a proud people, and I did have concerns whether or not a board game would do justice to those folks, especially when you're appropriating a culture for a board game that you're not part of. Now, I know there's a lot of back and forth on that, but when I opened the rule book, I immediately saw some text that made me feel so much better. And I'm going to go ahead and put that text up here for a little bit so you can read it. But let's talk about the game itself. This is a drafting game, which I love card drafting, and this is a set collection game, and I love set collection. But what I really, really love about this game is the interesting choices of drafting. I'm not just selecting a card, I'm selecting an action that I want to take. And as the game goes on, I'm building those actions up more and more powerful, or maybe I'm not building them up more powerful. Maybe I've decided to go all in on orcas, or maybe I've decided I really want to be more aggressive and I really want to try to get those weapons. So I can really just make these meaningful decisions. And while there's the luck of the cards coming out into the Great White, it's so easy to mitigate it. But it also does lend itself to, I really want those 3 polar bears, but it gets back to me and those polar bears have been taken and maybe I need to change my strategy up. And I love the way this doesn't feel like I'm playing on my own. It takes a village, and so that's really cool here in that the villagers in my village really do affect my opponents, and the villagers in theirs affect mine. And through the use of those rights, I even more get to interact with the players around me. So overall, I absolutely loved this game. It hits on everything I want it to be. It plays well at 2, 3, 4 players. No matter the player count, it plays about the exact same amount of time in my experience. It is easy to teach. I immediately was able to pick it up myself and immediately able to teach it to other people. In fact, you really don't need to teach much about it other than just give them a brief overview of what each of those do. I love the 2 expansions that were built into it. In fact, the conflict deck, I personally don't think I would play without it again. I like that whole war and peace sort of vibe going on there. But if you don't like any sort of conflict, just don't use those cards. Overall, the artwork in this game is fantastic. It's just so beautifully done. And even though it can feel a little samey after a bit, it just works for me. I happened to show, when I was showing the game, I showed that Fox Spirit, and it happens to be one of my favorite cards in the entire game. And I find myself, every time I play, liking a particular card's artwork so much more than maybe the last time I played it. So overall, if you're looking for a drafting game with some set collection and action selection that really does have a really high degree of replayability and be easy to teach and just just a very well experience, a nice experience overall. This is a game definitely worth taking a look at. I hope this has helped you decide if Inuit the Snowfolk is a game that might be right for you and your game group, and I look forward to seeing you folks next time.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.